we don't need 3D Slicer anymore, and we're going to continue with Blender. So note that in the outliner we have a list of objects. Please don't move one to the other or rename any of these cylinders and sleeves and drill bits, because the coding is not going to work. There's a logical order: implants, cylinders, drill bits, sleeve zones, an implant list of all of the implant components that we have used in the scene. So at no stage must this be tampered with. All the other objects that we import and create, we can have our own collections and folders. So what we're gonna do is take this denture and we're going to make a tissue model with it. Also, we're going to make a little bridge with the same denture. So let us stop Slicer, and again we can close all of these by left clicking and Control left click, and then we can keep the one that we want to be using. But it's a bit difficult, because if you do have a tissue model scanned in, we can then use the alignment ICP tool to align the fitting surface of the model to the fitting surface of the denture. So let's just actually give this a little bit of a color at the moment. Remember, to select it, we have to click on this, otherwise you won't be able to select it. And I'm going to set the alpha value back. So we're going to need a tissue model, and we're going to be using the denture. So I'm going to be selecting this, shift right click to place our cursor, and then we're going to go into the model designer and click on arch cut. And here, E to extrude, we can extrude it all the way, sort of on the inside of the edge. So if it doesn't cut the first time round, simply manipulate the line to a little bit of a different position. But I didn't have any problems cutting this the first time round. So here I've got my arch cutting line all the way around, but before we trim this, we should duplicate this denture, because as I've said to you before, we've got to make a tissue model and we need to make a bridge. So I'm going to get out of the edit mode. I'm going to select this and Shift D to duplicate. Make sure your magnet is off. If your magnet is on, this is going to happen. It'll displace the denture and we can't have that. So Control Z back, the snap off, and then Shift D and enter. Usually I'll do enter on my keyboard and not on the mouse, because you don't want to move the mouse. In fact, we could actually lock this. We could just click on the lock. And I'm going to be moving this into a different collection, because I don't need to see this at the moment. So I'll be calling this bridge. Press OK, and we're going to hide this in our outliner. And this specific one for tissue model, I'm going to lock this as well, just to make sure it doesn't move. Then I'm going to go back into edit mode and I'm going to click on trim. Select a vertex of the inside of the tissue and we tissue fit, and then we're going to click on clean. Following that, I'm going to look at it from the top, and I've noticed that the color shading is a little bit out. And if you're using Blender a lot and you get used to the shading of the colors and so on, you can quickly tell that this is inside out. And of course, logically speaking, it would be, because it's the inside of the denture. So to verify that, I'm going to click on face orientation, and we're going to see it's red. We've learned that this needs to be blue. So I'm going to flip the normals, and then we're going to extrude this into a model. It's an upper base. And then we're going to bring this down a little bit. So we've got these new arrows in our model designer, which we never had before. So if you have the old module, you can update, or you can use a scale and simply move this up and down. So here we've got our model, and then we're going to also do a bridge. So I'm going to be unhiding the other one, and we're going to make a bridge out of this. Again, click on it, shift right click to place the cursor, and then we're going to cut this out. But if you want to use this for future reference, we will be losing this denture for good if we're making a bridge. So again, I'm going to click on Shift D, and I'm going to move it into a collection where we can just say spare parts or something. And we're going to hide this. So this is how we're going to work our way through it. So shift right click, and then we're going to click arch cut, and then using the E key and the G key, I will then cut this close to the teeth, something like this. I'm saying close to the teeth because we don't want it to extend beyond where we want the stackable guide to be. So we don't want it to interfere in any way. This has to be a bridge and not a denture itself. Okay, so I'll just put this on pause. Now before I trim it, I'd like to just see where the trim line should be. So we can have a look and see where our implants are. So here we're extending a little bit too close. Remember, we'd like to make holes going through our denture. So if you can imagine a hole being made later on, it'll open up the side wall. So I'm going to be moving this down a little bit. So with the proportional editing on there, we can use the G key and just simply move this down a little bit. So it's important to always check your work and to understand the workflow of how these things work. Now in this case we're using the denture for making a bridge, but we could just as easily have made our own little denture using the wax up module. So I'll just make a little bit more space for us to then put something in. Also remember that if we need to make a tube that runs along this. So if I hide this, for example, I'm trying to explain in great detail how this works. So here we can see we're going to be making a tube running along this side. So we want to make sure we've got enough space there. So from the top, we could even bring this one in a little bit more. So that's what I'm going to do. Just use the G key in the proportional editing. And that should do the trick. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut this. So click on trim, select a vertex that or the mesh you want to keep, and click on clean. Right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to make a model out of that. So click on upper base, and then we're going to go on scale edit, and then use the arrow buttons to bring this into the model. So what I'm looking for now is I want to make sure that there's enough space for my skeleton to run by. It's extruding this way a bit. I'm going to use the S key to scale it down and bring it into the model. So in transparent mode, we can see how this looks. So picture the tube running along this side, okay? So we need sufficient space there. So that's looking good, and I will then keep it like this.